Okay. Rebecca, you want to go ahead and pull up your share your screen with everybody? Pull that up. Pull up your presentation. Okay.
All right.
All right. So welcome everybody, Texas Lawyer Wellness Group, to our monthly CLE talk. This is the I guess second one third one maybe now that we've had in a row. So today we've got a very special guest, a very good friend of mine, proud to say, Rebecca Ray, with licensed marriage and family therapist with Rebecca Ray Ray Family Therapy. Yes, located in Houston near the Beltway 8 in Barker Cypress, so Northwest Houston. But Rebecca's been kind enough to put together an amazing presentation on a topic that is, I know, very near and dear to all of our hearts, burnout. So please just enjoy. We're going to do the presentation, and then afterwards there should be time for some questions. I want to tell everybody, please look in your in the chat box. I've got the course number, and I've got the an email address that you need to email your name and bar number to. So please email your name and bar number to texaslawyerswellness@gmail.com, and you can look and see what the course number is, and you can self-report that if you like. So without further ado, join me in welcoming the wonderful Rebecca Ray, licensed marriage and family therapist.
Hi. Can I just ask, what can y'all see? Because this is not going to full screen like it did before. Can you see the video covering up slides and the internet thing at the top?
We can move. Yeah, you've got the internet thing at the top, deal like that. But I mean, you can still see the slides.
Okay, let me just see if I don't know why this is not okay. Well, we can.
Oh, you need to maximize your web browser. That's why. I mean, see, go to this little green thing, the little green thing to the left.
This?
No, keep going. Like this? Yes. Make that all the way.
No, I think it is.
Is it?
Yeah, it should go to present. See, this just goes in line with what was happening the last 2 nights with my power and internet going out. So it's just,
well, hey, we are in Mercury is in retrograde. Okay. And if you know anything about Mercury retrograde, we expected this. Okay. So it's no big deal. No big deal at all. We're going to push through. We're going to push through it. Mercury, we're not going to let Mercury get us down on this. All right.
No, we're not.
This is not a problem.
Here we go. All right. So as Lee said, I'm Rebecca Ray. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm also the owner and founder of...
Richard, could you mute yourself, please? I think you're coming through there. Got a little feedback.
I'm also the owner and founder of Ray Family Therapy in Houston, Texas. We're a group psychotherapy practice, and we specialize working with couples, families, teens, and adults. And I just want to thank you for spending your lunch hour with me, because I know this time is precious and you're all busy. And I just want to let you know that today we're going to be talking about burnout and vicarious trauma, the symptoms, the causes, and the ethical problems related to these issues. And you're also going to learn ways to shift this dynamic and find passion again for your legal career. I have friends, I have family members, and I even have clients who practice law. And one common thread that I've found through all of them is stress and burnout related to organizational structure, complex legal cases, violent or disturbing stories heard while preparing cases, and the never-ending stress to managing and billing your entire work life in 6-minute increments. As a therapist, I have also dealt with my own burnout and vicarious trauma and experienced its effects on my life as a practice owner, as a mother, and as a partner, and as a therapist. And I hope to equip you with the necessary knowledge that you're going to need in order to be able to manage the burnout and the effects of the vicarious trauma throughout the entirety of your legal career. I want to share with you briefly my own experience with vicarious trauma and burnout. In my early 20s, I worked at an emergency shelter for children who came from severe cases of abuse or neglect. And it was an emergency shelter where they put them before they could find a foster family to put them with. And as you can imagine, that these homes were abusive, they were neglectful, and not only that, but some of them were they were dangerous and they were disgusting. And I know that those of you who work in family law have probably heard some of these same stories and worked on cases similar to what we saw coming in there. And after about a year of this work, I woke up one day and I just couldn't stop crying. I realized that all the stories and just hearing those stories over and over again had impacted my brain and my body in a way that suddenly just poured out in this uncontrollable sadness. And I'm thankful for that experience that I had early in my life, because it taught me how to set the internal boundaries and the external boundaries necessary in order to protect myself from this. And we're going to talk about that later. It also taught me that the importance of engaging in self-care to balance that. And it helped me develop these habits that serve me well today in the work that I do. As a business owner, and I'm sure some of you out there are practice owners, and I've struggled with burnout, and I've had to learn to set boundaries around work and for how long I work. I attend weekly therapy, and I collaborate with other people to help me support me in my goals, to help manage that burnout. And so what I want you to do is walk away with skills that are going to allow you to love your life again without changing your career, so you can practice law with more passion in a way that is in alignment with your core values and your core beliefs. As a systemic therapist, so that means whenever I'm working with clients, I'm looking at their entire system, whether from their family to their work life, just and even social systems that are affecting that person. That's how we conceptualize all of our clients as LMFTs. And so I view people through this lens that enables me to pay attention to areas of their life and the systems and subsystems in which they function and how the systems impact them. And there are three things that I think of when I'm working with my clients. One, are they happy at home? Do they have quality relationships and quality friendships? Two, are they fulfilled in their work? And does their work support them in a way that enables them to live in alignment with their core beliefs and their values? Three, do they have something to look forward to? So I want you to just take a minute and just reflect on those questions about your own life. And as we move through the material today, I want you to think about your own life and how there might be small changes that you could start implementing today that will increase your joy and satisfaction in life. I want to clarify for you the difference between burnout and vicarious trauma. Burnout results from a discrepancy between expectations and outcomes. For example, toxic work culture, or a lack of resources to get the job done, or unrealistic timelines. Vicarious trauma, on the other hand, results from hearing traumatic stories over and over and over again. So first, I want to review burnout in just a little bit more depth with you. So research has shown that burnout, specifically in the legal profession, stems from a combination of factors that include organizational problems, such as a toxic organizational structure, the exclusion of collaboration, and the emphasis on self-reliance. In the legal field, a lack of multidisciplinary work models, the effects of working with disenfranchised and traumatized clients and populations, and an immutable requirement for confidentiality. These patterns start early in law school, which is a highly competitive environment where grades, class ranking, and approval of instructors drives an intense rivalry that place the autonomic nervous system, which we'll also talk about later, in overdrive. This model of stress-based learning can be an enduring pattern that stays with a lawyer throughout their career and eventually is going to induce burnout. The fierceness of this competition and lack of social support, it destroys the social support and connection. And as humans, we are pack animals. We're wired for connection. Lawyering can become this just dopamine-driven activity focused on extreme workloads without social support or collaboration necessary for team-oriented work, empathy, and social and emotional competence. Gallup polls show that in the United States, more than half of employees are burned out. And the World Health Organization has classified burnout as a disease that impairs health. Annual costs related to these health consequences can include diabetes, heart disease, premature death, and average in $109 billion spent to address these medical issues. Burnout creates huge problems at work, especially in the legal field. Lawyers who are burned out feel overextended and depleted and have callous and diminished connection to various aspects of their work, including their clients, their coworkers, or just the work itself. Furthermore, burnout leads to a depleted sense of self and accomplishments. So if you're burned out, even the things that you're doing and you're good at, you don't feel that they're important anymore. And so to summarize, lawyers who are burned out are exhausted, dissatisfied with their job, don't feel like the work they do is important or worthy of effort, and in the end, the lawyer's health, their clients, and family are the ones that suffer. Now I'd like to switch gears a little bit and talk about vicarious trauma. Vicarious trauma is a result of hearing, as I talked about early, traumatogenic material over and over and over again from highly emotional clients day after day. Lawyers who I'm talking to here, all of you you're the backbone of our legal system. You can't become a judge unless you've worked as a lawyer. We can't try cases if we don't have lawyers. Businesses would be in trouble without legal direction. Lawyers are weaved into every thread of our work, our government, all the systems that we exist in one way or another, and you are important figures in our world. Unfortunately, for some of you, this is not necessarily the case for all of you, but a lot of the times your clients probably aren't happy to see you, right? They share their intense emotions of anger, disgust, disappointment, fear, and that's just to name a few. And when you close their case, there is rarely what in the therapy world we call a therapeutic goodbye. That rarely happens. Rather, your firm refunds any money left in the retainer, and the client might say thanks, depending on the outcome of their case, might curse you out, but certainly say, I hope I never see you again, right? And this, of course, isn't personal, right? These people are relieved to be finished with a lengthy and costly legal process. And depending on the type of legal work you do, you might hear traumatic stories from your clients or spend hours poring over traumatic details of the case. You might feel like your client is asking you to be a therapist, a marriage counselor, a social worker, a priest, a friend, a confidant, and innumerable other roles for which you are not trained or qualified to fill. The repeated dribble of traumatogenic material accompanied by heightened levels of emotions, the distress from clients, changes a lawyer's inner schema about their views of the world and their safety in it. To illustrate this, I want to share an example of my own life. As a therapist, I hear many stories of abuse that in turn have made me worried about sending my own young daughter to a sleepover at a friend's house. This is not because I had a bad experience at a sleepover as a child. It is a direct result of hearing story after story of abuse that occurred while at a friend's house. So you can see how the material that I'm exposed to day after day has shifted my internal schema and sense of safety for my own child in this world. And then also I want to let you know that the vicarious trauma can lead to symptoms of PTSD. And the American Psychiatric Association included indirect occupational exposure as a viable criterion for the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. So if you're hearing these stories, you could also be experiencing PTSD. You don't have to have actually experienced the event to have PTSD. So let's talk a little bit more in detail about PTSD. So if you or a lawyer you like or love is experiencing any of these symptoms, I urge you to seek help from a qualified therapist. A therapist can assess for the PTSD and provide evidence-based treatments for symptoms. You might be wondering, I'm a lawyer, why would I have PTSD? And it's exactly what we talked about earlier, the vicarious trauma. That one qualifier for PTSD, the experiencing repeated or extreme exposure to aversive details of traumatic events, including pictures, electronic media, and this is when the exposure is work-related. So if you're at work, reading about traumatic cases, viewing photographs, pictures, hearing the stories, that can qualify you for a diagnosis of PTSD if you meet some of these other symptoms. The additional symptoms of PTSD include recurrent or distressing memories, recurrent or distressing dreams related to the trauma, flashbacks, and flashbacks entail someone feeling as though they are re-experiencing the event, or can also be just a complete lack of awareness of time and the environment in which they're in. And so intense stress related to these trauma cues remind the person of the trauma, and with memory and these intense physical reactions really disrupt the person's ability to have quality relationships and really can impact their relationships at work and with their families. Additional symptoms include difficulty with memory and concentration, distorted and persistent negative beliefs about self, and even other people or the world, and marked diminished in activities that were, or hobbies that were enjoyed prior to experiencing or hearing about the trauma. And then also feeling estranged and disattached from others. You don't necessarily feel connected to other people in the world, your friends or your family. Irritability, angry outbursts, and then reckless and self-destructive behavior, hypervigilance, exaggerated startle response, and sleep disturbances. And if these symptoms persist longer than a month, then you may qualify for a PTSD diagnosis. So kind of think about that in your own life and the kind of work that you do, and if this is something that perhaps is impacting you in some way. And I am going to talk later in the presentation about, like, it doesn't have to stay this way if this is what's going on for you. So I want to talk a little bit about your autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system has two branches. The sympathetic branch acts as the body's accelerator, and the parasympathetic branch acts as the body's brakes. When our sympathetic branch or our autonomic nervous system is activated, right, it moves blood into our muscles for quick action, partly by triggering the adrenal glands to release adrenaline and cortisol into our body that speeds up the heart rate and increases our blood pressure. The parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system promotes self-preservation, digestion, wound healing, and triggers a release of acetylcholine to put a brake on the arousal. So this will slow down the heart rate, it'll relax the muscles, and it returns breathing to a normal rate. If you have ever taken a yoga or a meditation class, you likely practiced breathing. And when we take a deep breath in, we activate the sympathetic nervous system, and this burst of adrenaline speeds up our heart, and exhaling in turn activates the parasympathetic nervous system. And so I'm going to provide you with some exercises you can use to tone your nervous system in the next few slides. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about polyvagal theory and how this relates to the autonomic nervous system, because this is going to tie into some of the interventions that I talk about later in the presentation that could potentially help you. So Dr. Stephen Porges is a researcher who introduced polyvagal theory, which explains how our vagus nerve, which is not a single nerve, it's a family of nerves, and it's a neural pathway in our body that innervates. It starts in the brain and it goes all the way through your body, innervating various organs, including not only your brain, but your lungs, your heart, your stomach, and your intestines. In fact, without our vagus nerve, our hearts would beat approximately 120 beats a minute. And so with our vagus nerve, we have a resting heart rate that for most people is below 80. Beginning in the brainstem, the dorsal vagal primarily influences organs below the diaphragm. And so I kind of want you to think of this neural network as being two different portions, right? It's like the area that's connecting in your brain and your neck, and the area that's going below your diaphragm and your digestion. And so the ventral vagal, which is the part of the neural network that's further up in your body towards your brain, is the oldest part of the mainly affects the organs that are above the digestive system. And the dorsal vagal, which is the part that's in the lower portion of our body, is the oldest part of the parasympathetic nervous system and originates in our reptilian ancestors. So we're kind of getting into this, kind of expands on Darwinian theory and how we have kind of shifted as humans, because the ventral vagal is only seen in mammals. And so the dorsal vagal and the sympathetic states, right? So you've all probably heard of fight, flight, or freeze. These create an either or experience, right? It constricts your possibilities. So when you go into a fight or flight response and that dorsal vagal is activated and your sympathetic nervous system is activated, you're going into a fight or flight, which is, I tell a lot of couples that I work with, because people will experience this when they get into conflict with their partners or with their families. And it's really handy if you're in a forest and you need to get away from a tiger. But when we're in our everyday life and we're at work and we're relating to our coworkers and to our family, when we go into this fight or flight type response, this sympathetic response, it's hard on our bodies, and it's also hard on our relationships, right? Because like I said, we can't see the opportunities that we have before us. We become either or, black and white thinkers. We can't see in the gray area, right? And so the ventral vagal, on the other hand, right? So think of the top portion of the vagus neural pathway. is responsible for you being able to turn your head from side to side. If you think about it, they're mammals, right? We do this in order to, it softens us, right? And it helps us to be able to express more. So I want you to think of the ventral vagal part. If that's toned and functioning well, it's because we're responding to the people around us in a positive way, right? It's why we're calmed by a soothing voice. It's why we're happier and we're more calm if we feel understood by our peers and our family, and we feel valued and appreciated by the people who are around us. And it's the ventral vagal thrives on social connection. And so this theory really helps us understand how connection and safety within the systems that we live and work in promote inner peace and what we would call vagal tone. And it strengthens the body's system because the vagus nerve, if it's toned, right, it's going to help regulate your heart rate. And your heart rate variability is actually going to be better if your vagus nerve is toned. You're going to feel calmer. You're going to feel more secure. You're going to be open to possibilities, and you're going to be able to make better decisions in your life. So you can see how regulating our nervous system is really a very important part of being a good lawyer, because if you think about all the decisions that you have to make every single day, you really need to be in a state where you can think clearly and you can take in all the information, look at all the options, and really be able to advise your clients to the best of your ability. So if you've kind of been listening to all of this and you're like, okay, well, this kind of sounds a little bit like I might be experiencing some of this. That's okay, right? I've said I've experienced some of these things before as well. I want to talk with you about one evidence-based treatment for PTSD, trauma symptoms, anxiety, substance abuse, depression, and unresolved memories and other mental health concerns. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing is an effective form of therapy treatment, but it differs from regular talk therapy. EMDR involves bilateral stimulation. That's why you can see the ball tracking back and forth below the eyes. It calms the brain and the nervous system, and it allows you to fully process and rewire new pathways in your brain and body. We use this bilateral stimulation that you see going back and forth to provide feedback to your brain and body. And we can do this in several ways. So a therapist can wave their fingers, right? Or you can, if you're on teletherapy, you can track a ball just like you see going back and forth with your eyes. You can also wear headphones that will alternate the sound in your ears, or you can use tappers that you hold in your hand that are going to alternate, that are going to vibrate alternately in your hands. And I know all this sounds a little bit strange, but if you work with somebody who's certified in EMDR, they're going to explain all of this to you clearly. And then the two of you are going to get to decide what type of bilateral stimulation is used as you're processing these memories. And as I said, if you can do EMDR online, there's just a special software that's used where you can track a ball across your computer screen or listen to a sound alternating in your ears. And this process is collaborative with your therapist. And during an EMDR session, if you're kind of wondering what's that like, because a lot of people are like, okay, what I've heard of EMDR, it's been in the news more often. Some of the famous people have even talked about using EMDR to resolve trauma symptoms. When you get to the point where you're processing memories with this type of therapy, the therapist will ask you to close your eyes or look at the floor or any point in the office, but just not at the therapist. And your therapist is going to sit quietly and track your facial expressions and your progress and your movements as you process these memories. Most people sit quietly with their eyes closed, and we carefully look for nuances that indicate that your processing has shifted or has changed in some way. We will periodically ask you, what did you notice? And you'll provide a few words to describe where you are in your processing, and we'll reply with, let's go with that. And this will continue until you fully process the memory. And what happens when you process the memory, everybody has positive neural networks in their brain, right? These are the positive experiences that you had in your life. And we also have the trauma memories. And so what happens is they end up connecting to each other. It's like you're rewiring your brain so that when you think back to that memory after you've processed it, you're not going to have the same physical sensations. You're not going to have the same emotion. You're not going to have the same emotional response. Some people describe it as it's almost kind of like it's up on a black and white TV. It's there, but it's just not really bothering me anymore. Does that make sense? And so I want to talk about another intervention that can be used. The Safe and Sound protocol it's a non-invasive and it's a pleasant music intervention that will reduce stress, lessens auditory sensitivity, facilitates social engagement and resilience, and promotes well-being. Safe and Sound protocol works at a neural level, and it tones the nervous system to reduce stress and promote calm. Similar to the physical exercise that you do in the gym, the Safe and Sound protocol gently stimulates and exercises neural pathways related to sociability and connectivity. So the Safe and Sound protocol is based on years of research done by Stephen Porges and his polyvagal theory that I talked about a little bit earlier. The Safe and Sound protocol is a 5-hour therapeutic listening intervention designed to support your emotional regulation and what we would call neuroception. Neuroception is your sense of safety, right? It's just like we talked earlier about if our ventral vagal is toned and we're feeling safe and connected, we have that inner calm and peace and sense of safety in our world. The music itself is designed, it's an engineered music that is designed to stimulate the vagus nerve, which is, as we talked earlier, it's responsible for calming the nervous system, right? It helps regulate your heart rate. And so what they found is people who listen to this music have enhanced social engagement, and they've seen an increase in resilience in both children and adults. The basic purpose of Safe and Sound protocol is to create new and positive connections in the brain that will allow you to regulate yourself by stretching the nervous system, not stressing the nervous system. And Dr. Porges first started using this music with children who had been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. And throughout the years, they've continued to do research, and it has been expanded to not only create incredible changes in these children diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, but it also helps individuals who have auditory sensitivity or sensory processing disorder, anxiety disorders, ADHD or attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, depression, post-traumatic disorder. Additionally, relationship difficulties, social anxiety, separation anxiety, anger, reading comprehension issues, sleep problems. And it's intended to not be a standalone form of therapy. It's really works great when it's used in other types of therapy, whether that's psychotherapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, that the client is already engaged in. So it helps support those things. It actually will, the music that's engineered exercises the two muscles in your middle ear that innervate the vagus nerve. And so the music is actually, when I did it, I could feel pain in my inner ear. It was very mild, right? It was very mild, but I could see that feel that it was stimulating those muscles. And then in turn, that's toning the vagus nerve to help calm your autonomic nervous system. I also want to talk about some different things that all of you can do that you can start doing today to help calm your nervous system. That includes mindfulness, communication skills, self-compassion, boundaries between work and home, deep breathing, exercise, and hobbies. So first, I want to talk about a communication boundary. I think all of us struggle with communicating our needs in a way that promotes harmony with other people, right? I think that can be a challenge for a lot of us. And so I like to teach people, and I'm going to share with you today this talking boundary because it's super helpful. You can take a screenshot of this if that's helpful for you. So it's very simple. So I'll try to pretend I'm a lawyer and that I am having to share something with a colleague that maybe is annoying me. Okay. So when I heard you say that you didn't finish, I don't know, you didn't finish the document. Okay, you all do a lot of documents. Okay.
You didn't finish your motion for summary judgment. I asked you to do a motion for summary judgment. I asked you to do a motion for summary judgment and you didn't get it done.
Okay, when I heard you say that you didn't finish the motion for summary judgment.
Summary judgment, yes.
Okay, when I heard you say you didn't finish the motion for summary judgment, what I made up about that is that maybe you didn't understand the importance of our timeline and getting this done on time for our client. And about that, I'm going to pick something that's not on here. I feel fear. I feel worried, right? Because our client is expecting this today. And then you can follow up with, what is your need in that, right? So I need for you to clear your schedule this afternoon and get that done by 4 o'clock, because it's really important that we get that to our client today. You can hear how that's really explaining how this is making you feel, right? Without projecting anything on the other person, right? It's just stating, here we have a problem. Let's find the solution, and here's what my need is. And you can take this same talking boundary and use this at home. When I heard you say you forgot to unload the dishwasher, what I made up about that is, and you can go on and on and on, right? It takes a little practice to institute this into your life. So I even encourage people to stand in the mirror and practice it, right? Because it's not a natural way for us to talk. But this can be used at work, it can be used at home, and on and on. So let's get back to some of those other coping skills. And I'm not going to go into super deep detail about all of these, just because this itself could be a whole presentation, right? And some of these, a lot of you probably know about. So mindfulness, right? It's simply just staying in our present moment, noticing what we're feeling or experiencing. Mindfulness can be as simple as just noticing your breath, right? And if you're feeling activated and as though you're in a dorsal vagal state, right, of where you've got limited options and your autonomic sympathetic nervous system is activated, you can utilize mindfulness and deep breathing, just getting into that moment, noticing your breath. And then, as I talked earlier, deep breathing is going to regulate your nervous system, right? Because as you're breathing in, right, you're activating, and as you're breathing out, you're calming, right? And that cyclical motion puts everything back in order, right? And it'll help lower your heart rate, It'll help get you back in the present moment, and it'll help you be able to make clear decisions. Additionally, outside, right? I can't give you exercise advice because I'm not a personal trainer. But if you've been cleared by a trainer and your doctor to do exercise, I certainly encourage people to do exercise that feels good for them, right? Whether it's walking or going to the gym or whatever, suits you, that over time is going to help you regulate your nervous system as well. And then let's talk about boundaries at work, because we talked earlier about how you all bill your lives in 6-minute increments. And a lot of the lawyers that I know work at very odd hours. Not only do they work at the office, but then they go home and they work while they're watching Netflix, and it seeps into your whole life. And so I just encourage you to really try to set some boundaries for yourself about when are your working hours and when are not your working hours, right? It's okay if you're a night owl and you like to do your legal work between 4 and 10 p.m., that's fine, right? But if you started your work at 8 o'clock in the morning and you've been doing legal work all day, you're probably not doing your best legal work at 10 o'clock at night, right? And so you're doing a disservice to your clients by working outside of those boundaries, right? Because you're not producing the best work that you can. Additionally, you may be irritating your family, right? Because they want you present at home and you're busy working on a document or briefing or whatever it is. Does that make sense? And then also, I'll just briefly talk about self-compassion. Have some compassion for yourselves, right? Because we talked about how this all started in law school, right? In stress-based learning, and has kind of carried through. And now all of you are trying to shift, right? Your way of thinking and your habits and what you're doing. And so have some compassion for yourself. And self-compassion is based on the premise that all humans suffer in some way. And so to acknowledge that not only I suffer as a human, but all of you and the other people that we're related to in this world suffer in some way. And if I can have compassion for those other people who are suffering, I can have the same compassion for ourselves. Because I think a lot of the times when we're living in that state where our autonomic nervous system is in overdrive, right? And we're in that fight or flight mode where we have limited choices, right? And we see the world black and white, we can be really hard on ourselves, right? And instead of having compassion for ourselves, we may be talking down to ourselves on a regular basis inside our head, right? Which is putting you right back into that activated state, right? Because our thoughts are going to affect our feelings, right? It's going to affect how we function in the world. And so I just recommend you do maybe a little bit of research about self-compassion and how that can really help soften the judgment that you have for yourself. And not only that, but this is going to extend out into the world and the compassion that you have for other people. And then not only that, but hobbies. Like, do you have hobbies? If you think back to the 3 questions, are people happy at home and in their relationships? Are they happy at work? Do they have something to look forward to, right? And so I kind of think of hobbies as also what do you have to look forward to? Do you have a vacation planned? You can even think during the week, do I have a dinner out that I'm looking forward to planned, right? That's social, that's not with work colleagues. So think about how you can implement some of these things in your lives. And then I'm just going to close this out with how this impacts you as attorneys and why this is important. And so, we talked earlier about how you're the backbone of the legal system, right? And We talked a little bit about how sometimes work seeps into other places. But if you can get to a point in your life where you recognize when your autonomic nervous system is getting out of whack and it's time to step back and take a break, you're going to be a much better lawyer and you're going to be a much more ethical lawyer, right? Because whatever you were doing at 8 o'clock in the morning and you got done in 45 minutes and you billed your client for, and you might be doing the same thing at 10 o'clock at night with Netflix blaring in the background, right? And, you know, whatever else is going on at home at the same time, and it may take you 2 hours, right? Depending on what type of legal work you do. If you're working in criminal law, you may have people that are really relying on you, like the fate of their life relies on your expertise and being able to be a good lawyer. And so I just hope that I can stress to you the value of the work that you do, because I know if you're feeling burned out, you may not feel like it's important, but it really is. And people do value you, even if they don't always tell you that. And yeah, I think that pretty much closes out what I was going to share today.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much. That was really amazing. That was so good. Thank you. And are you willing to take some questions if anybody has any?
I
Okay.
am. I'm just going to stop sharing. So,
Yeah,
because it looks weird anyway.
I gotcha. And just for anyone that didn't hear this before, please look in the chat box. You'll see the course number, and you'll see an email address, Texas Lawyers Wellness at gmail.com, that you need to send your name and your bar number to. Thank you. That's all the housekeeping. And whoever has questions, please ask away. Hey, Shanna.
Sorry, I'm on the road, but I got court at 1:30.
All right.
Thank you guys for the wonderful presentation. My only question is if you would be so kind as to be willing to share with us your PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, I sure can.
Just shoot it to me.
That would be wonderful.
I'll make
Yes.
sure it gets to, yeah.
Just because since I'm on the road, I didn't get to fully take it in. So I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a question. Where can you find that safe and sound protocol? I mean, that program, like what specific therapist, you know, what do they have in their title that I know they offer that? Because I'm not sure that everybody knows of that. EMDR was already very specific.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of people don't. You can go to, I'm trained in it, and I know there are other therapists if you're in the Houston area that are trained in it, but you can, as long as the therapist is in Texas, because you're all Texas lawyers, so I'm assuming you live in Texas. So as long as you work with a therapist who's trained in safe and sound protocol in Texas, you can work with them. You can go to, should I just put the website in the chat box? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, be good.
Okay. Let me get back to Zoom. So integrated listening that's who produces this music program. And you can go there to find a clinician who is trained in safe and sound protocol. And then there are also occupational therapists that are trained in it, physical therapists who are trained in it, and then also psychotherapists and even some medical doctors, but I don't know how many you would find here in Texas. You just have to kind of check and see.
So if we were to do it with you, would you send us like a copy of that music and then we just listen to it at certain specific times, or how is that administered? Because it sounds really interesting and it's the first time I heard of it.
Yeah, so I have the subscription to the music, right? I pay for that annually, and then I just invite you to the subscription. I typically meet with my clients via Zoom or some other online platform. Because remember, we talked about ventral vagal is social, right? So if we're toning the vagus nerve, we don't want to do that shut in a dark room all by ourselves, right? We want to be connecting with other people around us while we're listening to the music. And so I have people get over-the-ear headphones that don't have noise cancellation, because if you noise cancel, you can't connect and hear other people. And so we just hang out, like we can talk, or you can sit in color, but you have another person that you can look at and connect with as your body and brain are experiencing this music. Because also sometimes people can have physical symptoms, right? I just noticed a little bit of pain in my middle ear, and I think that may be related to having a lot of ear infections as a child. I don't have any like data except anecdotal data, because I have used this with people who have had a lot of ear infections in childhood that was affecting their ability to be able to hear the voice of their partner, because men's voices are lower, and they were getting activated sometimes by things that weren't even like really activating. And then when we did this, it fixed it. So I don't know, it's interesting.
Could you share your information, your contact info?
Yeah, I can put it in the chat. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Well, while you're doing that, Rebecca, I have a question. Please share your information, but are you familiar with tapping, you know, like tapping like this? Have you seen this?
EFT, yep, emotional freedom technique, is that?
I've always heard it, just I have no idea what it does, other than it's supposed to affect your vagus nerve in some way. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I've used it in the past and it's worked.
Yeah,
like,
it does too for me. I don't know how it works, but it just does. It's like weird. It calms you down. Yeah.
Yes, it does. So what he's talking about, and I don't even know that I'm gonna do this right, but you tap up top, right? You tap bottom, you tap in the chin, and then you actually tap underneath your arm.
Okay.
And so and below your nose, yeah, I did that, below your nose, your chin. And as you're tapping, you talk to yourself about something positive. So I used this in grad school when I was doing do y'all done group projects before?
Yeah.
Right. And I was just annoyed because this person did not turn their stuff in on time. And I just like didn't want to do more work, and I needed to call them and talk to them about it. And I was like, okay, breathe. And I did it for like 5 minutes and just coached myself. I was able to call and have the nicest conversation, and I got the stuff done a few hours later. So you can implement that too, awesome. You know, in your work with other people. If you want to use your talking boundary, but your nervous system is so activated, you don't know that you can say it nicely, you know, if tapping works for you, tap it out.
Right. I like that. And I have a little follow-up question to, so in terms of detachment, what I found for me, like for me, detachment is actually detaching from, I don't know, from my work in a sense, whenever I'm doing, right. That's been a very helpful coping skill for me to be able to sort of like step back and not like almost rise above. It feels like you're rising above, you know, these things. And I know there's also unhealthy detachment too. So that always concerns me, like what's healthy and what's unhealthy when it comes to detachment, right? And if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So how do I put this? So I like to describe this to clients, the difference between secrecy and privacy. All right. If we're doing something in secrecy, it's usually done because if other people know, we have some sort of guilt or shame. And so if whatever we're doing is inducing guilt and shame, and we're not wanting to share that with other people, that's going to detach us from others.
Okay.
Right? Even if it's as simple as I know I should be doing something else, but I'm sitting here doomsday scrolling on social media for an hour and a half when I really should be paying attention to my kids.
Right.
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 We're detaching in a way that's not necessarily healthy,
That
right?
makes sense. Right.
Versus privacy, right? So think of privacy as being something that I'm doing alone just because I want to do it alone. Like,
Right.
okay, let's go back to the bike ride that we talked about
Right.
earlier when we were chatting, Lee, right?
Right.
You may not want to go on a bike ride with 3 people. You may be slower, you may be faster, but
Right.
there's no shame or secrecy. Bye, y'all. I'm going on a bike ride. See you later.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. That
Right?
helps.
Does
That's
that
a
make
great
sense?
distinction. That's beautiful. That's perfect. Yes.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything?
Hey, Lee, it's Gabriella. I'm on
Hey,
voice
Gabriella.
only because I'm actually doing some self-care and I don't think you guys want to see me in face mask and all that stuff. But
Good for you.
well, I figured this was a perfect time to multitask. So I have years and years worth of childhood trauma. I'm a recovered codependent, all these different people-pleasing qualities. And I actually posted today on the wellness group that I am struggling a lot with dealing with basic tasks as an attorney for things that I just don't feel align with me anymore. I've done EFT, I've done, EDMR, I've done all different types of trauma therapy. I do talk therapy regularly. I'm pretty vocal about my journey with people. So I had 2 questions. One is the sound wave therapy that you're talking about, is that the same as brainwave therapy? Do you know, are you familiar with brainwave therapy?
No, and I'm not trained in brainwave therapy, so I can't
Okay.
really speak to that. Are you talking about like
It's stimulation with sound of various parts of your brain to deal with trauma. And I mean, it's very similar to like EDMR, but with sound, like lower and higher Herzogs and things of that nature. So it's different
I'm
than
not
that.
familiar with that.
Okay.
No, I'm not
Okay.
familiar with that.
Well, and then the other question I had was, I'm burned out and I feel it because I feel misaligned, right? I feel like I was in court today and I'm having a panic attack over a reset for a jury trial that is just absolutely ridiculous to be panicking about. And I see that in myself. And then I'm like, okay, well, calm down, you do your job and get through the day, right? So then I thought, okay, your reward is you're going to go take a hot bath, put on a face mask and watch the wellness group, right? So, but how does one know when enough is enough? Does that make sense? Like I've done I feel so misaligned and I love parts of my job. And I kind of posted today, I want to keep doing certain parts of my job. I just can't do the others. Like I physically and mentally cannot do it any longer. How do you recommend that a person kind of process that? Like, do you recommend that talk therapy be it? Or, does that make sense? Maybe I'm just rambling, but.
Yeah, no, you're not rambling. I'm almost wondering, right, do y'all, like I went to a businessy type of talk thing with women and they talked about having like a mastermind. And I was thinking about it, like, oh, I have other therapists that I consult with about whether it's cases or just, being a practice owner, or I have people that I consult with about my supervision, or I have my therapist, right? That's part of my personal life journey. And so it's like, I have all these different people. As attorneys, do y'all have kind of what they talk about in the business community, the mastermind, or has the whole self-reliance thing been so driven in, right, that there's is there more collaboration needed so that you've got peers who can help you see, right? Because a therapist, right, isn't going to be able to help you necessarily guide your legal career because all the rules and what your experts are. I don't know. I've heard you can't it's like I can't switch and be like, oh, I don't want to be a marriage and family therapist anymore. I want to be a social worker. Okay, well, I'd have to go take other classes. I'd have to go take a whole exam. And I'm guessing a law is like that. And so it might be a little tricky, if you do tax law to all of a sudden be like, oh, I want to be a family lawyer now,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of it. I've been doing this for 24 years and I I don't know what else I could do. You know, like I don't want to go back to school. I don't want to like not have any income. You know, and I don't want to take on cases that I don't know enough about, because that's called, you know, malpractice. So, you know, it would be like you going and saying, I'm going to be a social worker and give people advice on social work topics that you have no clue about. You know, I think that the greatest thing that we have right now is actually this particular Facebook group. Like, I love it. Like the support I get, I've posted anonymously, I've posted with my name on there, silly things, but like, I don't think lawyers talk enough, and I think that it's changing, but I don't think they talk enough about the fact that this is really not an easy job. It doesn't matter what part of law you practice. There is nothing that, I don't know of a single lawyer that is either not unhappy or totally stressed out. You know, I'm once they get to maybe like the 10-year mark, you know, maybe the first 10 years, everyone's like, I'm learning, I'm great, I'm learning, I'm winning, I'm doing all these great things, I'm changing lives. But you hit a point as a lawyer, in my opinion, where you're either going to sink or you're going to swim. And I feel like I'm sinking. You know what I mean?
Gabriella, this is Shayna. And please come join us on Monday. Please come join us Monday night for support group. Let us love on you.
Yeah. If you don't go to support group, Gabriella, for sure. And that's the other thing, Gabriella, I'll tell you, I need to talk offline, because I was in the same spot you were, and Shannon can testify to this. We had a conversation about it. I was just sick of practicing law. And you know, listen, here's the thing. If you're asking yourself, how do you know when enough's enough, enough's enough, right? Like you're having to ask yourself this question, you already know, okay? And I was able just to find a gig that kind of it was a perfect job for me. All right. It's like managing a law firm, but not necessarily practicing law. And I've got a chance to like make it a good place to work even. Like I get to make that decision, stuff like that. Like, so you and I should talk for sure.
All right. I will reach out to you after this. The other thing I wanted to tell you about, and thank you so much for speaking. You said something earlier about how the stress and the vagus nerve affect your physical well-being. Mm-hmm. And I think that is 100% true. I'm a 13-year breast cancer survivor. I had stage 4 breast cancer when I was 34 years old, and I'm grateful to be here. I promise you that. Yeah. But I went to my 13-year meeting with my oncologist, and she looked at me and said, I love that you raise your family, that you're a single mom, that you do all these things, that you are a go-getter, that you're a trial attorney, you're fierce. And she looked at me and she said, you need to quit your job because the stress is going to kill you. Yeah. And so, you know, that on top of everything else is really hard. So I just, you know, I'm grateful for your presentation. It was excellent. I do hope that you share the PowerPoint so that we can review it again.
It's not a PowerPoint, it's Canva. And so now
Canva.
Now I got to learn how to share that.
It's the nicest PowerPoint you'll ever see.
It's pretty because it's in Canva, but shareability and whatever.
Awesome.
But I'll figure out how to get it to you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
But I think what just these people were saying, right? They're saying, hey, let me be part of your mastermind, right? In some capacity and way, coming to this group, right? Reach out to me. I can talk to you about this. I was here. Let me help mentor you to get to a better place, to collaborate with each other. Right.
Thank you so much.
It is stressful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For sure. So I'm just putting the course number in the chat box again, one last time for everybody. We're about 10 minutes over. I mean, I think that Rebecca's fine to talk, but you know, if you run, you got to run. Does anybody have any questions? Any more questions before we pop off? Okay, there being none, I'm going to go ahead and end this. Rebecca, thank you so much for your time.
See all of you.
Really awesome.
I still feel like I have to wave when we're on video since I can't.
I'll wave back for you. There we go. You have one face, wave it back. So I'll get that. I'll get with you. We'll get that that Canva presentation PDF or something and get it out to everybody. So
that sounds good.
Yeah. Thank you all, everyone, for joining us, and thank you again, Rebecca, for your time. You'll have a wonderful, beautiful day.
You too. Take care. Bye.